My sister-in-law became obsessed with my life and tried to steal it. Yesterday, I found an old photo of us, me, James, and his younger sister Elise, taken the day we got engaged. Elise had taken the photo, smiling behind the camera. I remember she kept asking us to move closer, to smile wider, to tilt our heads just a little more. Back then, I thought she was just being supportive. But now? Now, I look at that picture and wonder if she already knew she'd be part of our life forever. When James first told me Elise needed a place to stay, I didn't hesitate. Family was family. She'd just gotten out of a long-term relationship that, according to James, had left her drained and in need of a fresh start. We had a guest room, and we weren't struggling. Saying no would have felt heartless. But the moment she stepped inside, something in the atmosphere shifted. I don't know how to describe it exactly. The light didn't dim, the air didn't get cold. It wasn't supernatural. It was social. Emotional. She had this presence, heavy and quiet, like someone who carries more than they say. Elise was stunning in that low-effort, thrift store model way, vintage coats, naturally messy hair, eyes like she'd seen some shit. She hugged me when she came in, and her grip was tighter than I expected. Just enough to linger. Just enough to raise a flag. She was polite, of course. Overly so. Let me do the dishes, I'll cook tonight, you go sit down, I've got it. Every offer sounded kind, but felt like control, like she was securing her place here by becoming indispensable. The first week, she stayed out of our way. Mostly kept to the guest room or took long walks. James said it was her process. She needs time to settle her nerves. But I noticed things. Little things. Like my favorite blanket, the one my mom crocheted for me, folded differently. Or my hand lotion showing up in the guest bathroom. Or the fact that our Spotify history had artists I didn't recognize, played during hours I was at work. Once, I found her in our bedroom. It wasn't dramatic. I came home early from a meeting, and she was making the bed. Our bed. She claimed she was just tidying up. That it looked messy when she passed the door. James laughed when I told him later. She's just helpful, babe. Chill. But I didn't feel chilled. I felt cornered. That night, I had a dream that I was being watched. Not harmed. Just observed. I woke up at 3:15 a.m. The hallway light was off. Silence. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was projecting stress onto Elise. But the next morning, James asked if I had opened the bedroom door in the middle of the night. I told him no. He paused. Then said, "Weird." I thought I heard it creak open. I started keeping track of small things after that. It felt silly at first, like something only a paranoid person would do, but my gut wouldn't leave me alone. So I made a list in my notes app. Things like, shampoo bottle lower than yesterday. Favorite pen missing from drawer, returned a day later. Guest room door open when I swear it was closed. Each note, on its own, was nothing. But together, they felt like a pattern. Elise wasn't just living here. She was studying here. I didn't want to accuse her. I didn't want to create tension. So I tried to gently push boundaries. I started locking our bedroom door when we slept. Not for safety. That's what I told James, but because I was having trouble sleeping. He didn't question it too much. If he noticed my increasing edginess around Elise, he didn't say anything. Or maybe he just chalked it up to the stress at work. But stress doesn't explain what happened one Thursday night. James was out, a late business dinner. I came home early, and Elise wasn't in her room. I didn't think much of it. I put on comfy clothes, poured a glass of wine, and settled on the couch to watch something stupid and relaxing. 20 minutes in, I heard something. A soft bump. Followed by the faintest creak, like pressure on old wood. I muted the TV. Listened. Another bump. Coming from upstairs. I stood up, heart beginning to race. It was probably nothing. A pipe. The house settling. Maybe Elise had dropped something. But still, I found myself climbing the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, like I didn't want the house to know I was there. The hallway was dark. Our bedroom door was open. And Elise was inside. She was sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at my nightstand. My journal, the one I kept zipped inside a drawer, was in her hands. I stood frozen in the doorway, a cold sweat breaking across my back. "Elise," I said. She looked up, startled but composed. "I was just curious," she said. "I heard you mention you were journaling again. Thought maybe it could help me too." "You went through my drawer," I said flatly. She shrugged. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it was that private." "That's what drawers are for," I snapped. She stood, placing the journal carefully back on the nightstand like it was fragile. "I didn't mean to upset you. You need to stay out of our room." There was a long pause. Then she smiled. Not big. Not apologetic. Just flat. "Of course." She walked past me, brushing my shoulder with hers, and disappeared into the hall. I stood there for a long time, staring at the place she'd been sitting. My pillow was dented. She hadn't just been looking at my journal. She had been lying in my bed. The next morning, Elise acted like nothing had happened. She greeted me with coffee, my favorite blend, made exactly how I liked it. It used to be something James did for me, back when mornings were slower and sweeter. Now, the gesture felt like mockery. I accepted the cup with a stiff thank you, noting her perfect timing. James came downstairs just as I was about to mention what had happened. But Elise beat me to it. "I think I freaked your wife out last night," she said with a laugh. "I was in your room, stupid of me, I know, but I was just looking for something to read." Her journal was on the nightstand, and I couldn't help myself. James looked at me, blinking like he hadn't heard the full story yet. I wanted to correct her, to tell him she hadn't just looked for something to read, she had dug. But he just chuckled and said, "You're lucky she didn't throw a shoe at you. She's territorial about her space." My blood boiled. I wasn't territorial. I was violated. But I smiled. Said nothing. Elise winked at me over her mug. Like it was our private joke now. Later that day, I installed a lock on our bedroom drawer. Nothing fancy. Just one of those cheap childproof kinds you can pick up at a hardware store. I told James it was for valuables. He nodded, distracted, eyes on his phone. That night, I hid my journal under the mattress instead. I started watching Elise more closely. She never left her phone out. She never turned her back to a mirror. And she was always listening, even when she pretended not to be. Once, while I was vacuuming, I opened the hallway closet to grab attachments. A pile of folded towels fell out, with one of my bras tucked between them. A red lace one I hadn't worn in months. I stared at it for a long time before shoving it back into the laundry basket. I didn't even ask. What was I supposed to say? "Hey Elise, are you stashing my underwear in the hallway closet?" Instead, I made a new folder on my phone and started documenting everything. Photos. Notes. Timestamps. Dates. Just in case. Because I was starting to get the feeling that Elise wasn't just invasive. She was performing normalcy. Like a rehearsed play. And I didn't know who the real audience was. That weekend, James went out of town for a conference. It was just Elise and me in the house. She offered to cook. I declined. We ate in silence. She asked how my work was going, but not in a real way, just enough to pretend she cared. Her eyes were always a second behind her smile. That night, I locked our bedroom door. Twice. I lay in bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling for what felt like hours. Then I heard it. The softest knock. Barely there. Just once. And then nothing. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared up at the dark ceiling, heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. The knock had been gentle, almost polite, but it wasn't a dream. I was awake. And someone, Elise, had stood outside our locked bedroom door. Just once. Just long enough to make her presence known. I waited another 10 minutes, then slipped out of bed and tiptoed to the door. I pressed my ear against it. Nothing. I flicked on the hallway light through the app on my phone. The hallway was empty. I barely slept that night. I kept thinking about all the little things. Her watching us. Entering our room. Holding my journal. The way she always knew what room I was in without me saying anything. And then the next morning? She acted like sunshine incarnate. Made pancakes. Wore one of my hoodies. The oversized one I always curled into on bad days. When she saw my face, her smile widened. "You okay? You look like you didn't sleep." I didn't answer. I just made coffee in silence while she flipped pancakes like nothing was wrong. That afternoon, I finally broke. I called James, voice low. I told him everything. The hallway appearances. The journal. The knocking. The bra. I didn't hold back. His silence on the other end made me nervous. Then he sighed. "She's going through something, babe. You know that. You're making it bigger than it is." "No, James. I'm not," I snapped. "I've been more than patient. But she's pushing boundaries. She's studying me." He was quiet again. "She's my sister." "I know that," I said. "But I live here, too. And I don't feel safe anymore." "I'll be home tomorrow," he finally said. "We'll talk about it then." I hung up and immediately regretted it. The moment Elise knew I'd spoken to James, things would escalate. That night, I didn't even try to sleep. I sat up in bed, phone in hand, the bedroom light on. At 2:47 a.m., I heard it again. Not a knock. The sound of the doorknob turning. Just once. Just enough to test if it was locked. My stomach dropped. I slipped out of bed and crept toward the door. I stared at the handle. It didn't move again. But I waited. The next morning, I checked the hallway camera I had secretly reinstalled. At 2:47 a.m., Elise stood at our door. Wearing my hoodie. Hand on the knob. Smiling. Then she mouthed something at the camera. I replayed it 5 times before I got it. 3 words. "You locked it." The next morning, I didn't eat. I didn't speak. I sat on the patio with my coffee and the weight of that footage sitting like lead in my stomach. Elise stayed inside, humming to herself, moving through the kitchen like she owned it. I could hear her opening drawers, closing cabinets, reorganizing things I had already arranged. She had been in our hallway at nearly 3 in the morning, trying our door. And smiling about it. And worst of all, she knew where the camera was. She looked right into it. That smile wasn't startled or apologetic. It was smug. Controlled. Like she knew the game had started and I had no idea what the rules were. James arrived home that evening. I met him at the door before he could come in and pulled him aside. "I need to show you something," I whispered. He sighed. "Is this about Elise again?" "It's about her trying to enter our room last night. At 2:47 a.m. I have footage." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw it, that flicker of concern. I ushered him into our bedroom, locked the door, and pulled up the camera app. I replayed the clip. Elise. Hoodie. Hand on the knob. "You locked it," her lips whispered, right into the lens. James stared at the screen for a long time, mouth slightly open. Then he ran his hand over his face. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay. This is weird." "Weird?" I said, incredulous. "It's dangerous. She's not just overstepping, James. She's watching us. She's performing innocence, but behind our backs, she's trying to get into our lives, into me." He looked like he wanted to disagree. But the footage made it hard to argue. "I'll talk to her," he finally said. "No," I snapped. "No more talking. She needs to leave. She's my sister. She's a fucking stalker, James." The word landed like a slap. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. The next morning, Elise was gone. No note. No text. No suitcase. Just, gone. James thought maybe she went out to clear her head. But when hours passed, and she didn't respond to calls or messages, even he started to panic. He called her friends, their parents. No one had heard from her. By midnight, I was pacing the living room. James was calling hospitals. I felt no relief. Just dread. Then, at 1:03 a.m., I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo. Of me. Asleep in bed. Taken from inside the room. I dropped the phone. My vision tunneled. James picked it up. Then his phone buzzed too. Another photo. This time, it was Elise. Smiling. Standing in the woods behind our house. Wearing my hoodie. Holding our spare bedroom key. I couldn't think straight. The room was spinning. My hands were clammy and numb, my throat dry like I'd swallowed dust. I sat down on the edge of the couch, trying to make sense of what I had just seen. Elise had been inside the house while we slept. And now she was somewhere in the woods behind our home, holding the key, our spare key, the one we kept in the flower pot outside until last week when I swore I'd moved it to the drawer in the laundry room. I checked. It wasn't there. James was pale, staring at his phone like it had betrayed him. "We have to call the police," he muttered. But what would we say? That his sister had taken a key from our house and sent us creepy photos? We had no proof she took the key. No law broken that we could definitively point to, yet. I opened the footage archive again, praying the hallway camera had caught something. But from the moment Elise disappeared earlier that day until now, there were no recordings. Nothing. Like she'd known exactly where the blind spots were. James called her again. Straight to voicemail. I stood up and walked to the back door. It was locked. I turned on the backyard light and looked out through the glass. Nothing. Just trees. Shadows. A breeze that made the branches hiss against one another. And then I noticed something, a shape at the edge of the woods. Small. Still. Almost like someone crouching. I blinked. It was gone. I slammed the curtain shut and locked the back door again, double-checking it this time. "We need to leave," I said. James didn't argue. We packed overnight bags in record time and drove to a hotel 15 minutes away. On the way there, James kept glancing at me, like he was about to say something but kept swallowing it. Finally, he asked, "Do you think she's dangerous?" I didn't answer at first. Then I said, "I think she's obsessed." We stayed in a hotel suite that night, neither of us sleeping. James filed a missing persons report, even though we both knew Elise wasn't missing. She was hiding. Watching. Waiting. In the early morning hours, James dozed off in the chair by the window. I sat in bed, wide awake, scrolling through photos on my phone, old pictures of Elise, birthday dinners, Christmas mornings. And then I found one I didn't remember taking. A photo of me brushing my hair in the mirror. From behind. Taken from the hallway. Taken from our house. The timestamp? 4 days ago. I hadn't been alone in the house when I thought I was. She had already started documenting me. The photo haunted me. Not just because it had been taken without my knowledge, but because it was perfectly framed, artistic even. Whoever took it wasn't just spying. They were curating. I showed James the image in the morning light. He stared at it for a full minute before whispering, "She's been planning this longer than we thought." We went home late the next afternoon, cautiously. James insisted on checking the entire property. Every room, every lock. We changed the alarm codes, moved the spare key from the laundry room to the inside of my purse, and disabled all smart device access Elise might have synced with. But I didn't feel safe. I felt watched. For 2 days, there was nothing. No messages. No sightings. James returned to work but kept checking in constantly. I stayed home, sick with tension. Every sound made my shoulders jump. Then, on the 3rd day, something changed. A package arrived. No return address. No stamps. Just a small brown box sitting neatly on our welcome mat. Inside, a single flash drive. I didn't want to look. Every cell in my body screamed to throw it away. Burn it. Pretend it didn't exist. But James plugged it into his laptop. One file. A folder titled simply, "She's Always Watching." Inside it? Dozens of subfolders. Each labeled with a date. And every date was from the past 2 months. He opened the first one. It was filled with photos of me. Brushing my teeth. Doing yoga. Writing in my journal. Talking on the phone. Always from a distance. Always with her just out of frame, reflected in mirrors or barely visible in shadows. We scrolled through in horror. Some images were from inside our bedroom. Some were from our bathroom. Then we found the audio files. Recordings. Elise had been hiding small devices, under our bed, behind air vents, inside fake books on shelves. And she had been listening. Dozens of conversations. Arguments. Intimate moments. Laughs. There was one labeled confession.mp3. I clicked play. Elise's voice, calm and syrupy, "He doesn't get it yet. But he will. She's in the way. Always has been. She thinks he loves her. But I know him. I know how he thinks. One day, he'll see." The file cut off. I turned to James. His face was white. "She's not just obsessed," I whispered. "She's delusional." He stood up, pacing. "We need to involve the police now. This is evidence. This is stalking, maybe even attempted." He stopped mid-sentence. Because the living room lights turned off. Then the hallway lights. Then upstairs. One by one. The house went dark. Except for the soft click of the front door opening. James lunged toward the front of the house, flipping light switches and shouting her name, but the circuits were dead. We were in total blackout, save for the dull blue glow of the laptop screen. My legs froze. I could barely breathe. It wasn't just the door opening, it was how it opened. Slowly. Silently. Like someone knew how to avoid detection. "Elise?" James called out, trying to sound firm. No answer. Then we heard it. Not footsteps, not talking. Just a faint melody. A soft, eerie lullaby playing from upstairs. James grabbed the nearest object, a fireplace poker, and gestured for me to stay behind. But I followed him. I couldn't sit still, not anymore. The song grew louder as we approached the second floor. It was one of those old nursery tunes, the kind played by wind-up toys. The hair on my arms prickled. We reached the hallway and saw it. The door to the guest room was ajar, and the music was coming from inside. James pushed the door open with the poker, inch by inch. The room was empty. But on the bed sat a small music box, the lid open, spinning slowly. And resting beside it, was my journal. The one I had hidden. The one I'd stopped writing in. I stepped forward and lifted it gently. It was open to a page I hadn't written. A page filled with my handwriting, forged. A new entry. "She doesn't understand. She never deserved him. But I do. I've always loved him. I'll keep loving him. Even if it means I have to erase her." I dropped it like it burned me. "She's in the house," I whispered. James and I backed out, inching toward the stairs. That's when we heard the front door slam shut. We froze. James motioned for me to stay behind him. "We're calling the cops right now," he said, pulling out his phone. But before he could dial, we heard something else. Our daughter's voice. "Mama?" It came from the hallway downstairs. Only, our daughter wasn't home. She was at her grandmother's for the weekend. We'd dropped her off that morning. I looked at James. His face twisted in confusion, then horror. "Mama?" the voice called again. Higher. Closer. James slowly stepped toward the railing. And that's when we saw it. A small speaker sitting at the bottom of the stairs. Looping a recording. Of our daughter saying "Mama" over and over. Planted. Set. Lured. James picked it up and smashed it against the wall. "She's trying to split us," he muttered. "She's playing games." Then, as if on cue, every light in the house came back on. And standing at the foot of the stairs, was Elise. Elise stood completely still, like a mannequin left behind in a lit display. Her hair was pulled back tightly, her clothes neat. In her right hand, she held a small silver key, the missing spare. In her left? My broken phone. She smiled. But it wasn't the warm smile she wore during pancakes or movie nights. It was cold. Flat. Like she'd finally stopped pretending. "I told you he'd see me," she said softly. James stepped in front of me. "Elise, put the key down." She blinked slowly, as if the request didn't register. "Do you know how hard it's been?" she asked, her voice dreamlike. "Watching you waste everything? Watching her take what should have been mine?" "Jesus, Elise," James muttered. "You used to tell me everything," she went on, gaze distant. "When we were kids. Remember? You said I was your favorite person. You said we were soul twins." James froze. "Elise," he said carefully. "That was a long time ago. We were kids." Her face twitched. "Not to me." The silence was sharp. Then she tilted her head. "She's not right for you," she said. "She doesn't see you the way I do. She doesn't even know your middle name." James didn't answer. She took a step closer. "I've been watching for months. She's careless. She forgets to charge her phone. Leaves doors unlocked. She gets lazy when she's comfortable." I felt like I was going to throw up. "Elise," James said firmly. "This isn't love. This is delusion. You're unwell." She flinched. "Don't say that." He held his ground. "You need help." Suddenly, she laughed. A high, brittle sound that sent chills down my spine. "You think I came here to ask for help?" And that's when I saw it. Tucked into the waistband of her jeans, a knife. I reached out and grabbed James's arm, whispering, "Don't provoke her." But Elise was already moving. Slowly, deliberately, she climbed the stairs one step at a time. "You locked the door," she said, eyes locked on mine now. That hurt. I backed away, toward the hallway. James stepped between us again. "Elise, stop. No more lies," she hissed. "No more pretending. You were supposed to choose me." And then, something unexpected. Sirens. Faint, but growing louder. Elise stopped. James must have called them before confronting her. His phone had never really left his hand. Her face fell. For the first time, she looked lost. "I did everything for you," she whispered. "You need to come downstairs, Elise," James said quietly. "It's over." She stared at us, then at the knife in her hand. For a second, I thought she might do something terrible. But instead, she sank to the floor, rocking slightly, murmuring something to herself. The sirens wailed louder. Then came the knock on the front door. The door opened, and two officers stepped into the foyer with practiced caution, hands resting near their belts. One of them made eye contact with me and nodded gently. The other slowly walked toward Elise. She didn't resist. She didn't run. She just looked at James one last time, not with hatred or even remorse, but with this tragic tenderness, like she still believed she'd been protecting something sacred. Like she was the one being betrayed. The officer knelt beside her, asked her name, gently removed the knife from her hand. She didn't speak. Just let herself be helped up, wrists soon cuffed, head bowed. They led her out into the night, into flashing red and blue, while our quiet street watched from darkened windows. I collapsed into the couch, knees giving way the moment the door shut behind them. James didn't speak for a long time. He just stood there, staring at the space she had just occupied. The air still felt heavy, like her presence hadn't left. We gave the police everything, the flash drive, the photos, the recordings. A detective told us Elise had a prior history of unstable behavior, things James had never known about or had long buried. She hadn't just wanted attention. She'd wanted my life. The days that followed were a blur. Friends called. Family whispered. Some couldn't believe it. Others admitted, in hindsight, they'd always felt something off about Elise. Too intense, too possessive. We changed the locks. We installed a full security system. And I spent nights awake, not because I feared she'd return, but because I feared the silence left behind. The kind that makes you wonder how close danger can get before anyone notices. Months passed. James started therapy. I did too. We tried to patch over the holes, not just in the walls or doors, but in our trust. In our peace. Elise had nearly torn us apart. But something about surviving her made our bond stranger, more rooted. One day, we were organizing the garage when I found something wedged behind a stack of boxes. A small, cheap-looking notebook with a floral cover. Inside were pages of writing. All in Elise's handwriting. But the voice was mine. It was written as if I had authored it. Journals, memories, thoughts that mirrored my real ones. Twisted versions of my life. Like she had been studying me not just to watch, but to become. I burned it that night. No ceremony. No speeches. Just fire and smoke and an overwhelming sense of finally taking something back. And though I sometimes wake up at night, startled by the creak of the hallway floor or the rustle of trees outside our window, I'd always remind myself, we survived her. And no matter what face obsession wears, love, real love, doesn't hide in the shadows. It doesn't creep into bedrooms or steal passwords or mimic your breath. It stays in the light. And I've stopped apologizing for locking the door.